Hello there everyone, and welcome back to Empire Total War with the Imperial Destroyer mod. This is the defense of Oslo, Norway, or actually it's called Christiania, I believe, at this point. And yes, this is showing the replay, and then after this I have another battle, so we're going to go from battle to battle as we're sort of covering the other that I explained in the last video, sort of explained what battles would come, and we'll see how far we get through this. Anyways, this is the defense. Let's just call it Oslo because it's easier. So this is the defense, and as I mentioned in the last video, it's really all about defeating the enemy infantry. Once the enemy has no infantry, they can't get in. A large part of their army is just cavalry, so they're gonna have problems getting at us. So it's about defeating these militia units. They have, I think it's 5 full-size regiments, and then they have one smaller militia, the 44th, which is down to 100 men. I placed 2 units of militia in front, the garrison militia on the walls, the extra generals on either side, and then the proper general inside. We're gonna look at a quite devastating volley here. The general comes in and boom! We utterly destroy this unit. There's a second unit coming in as well. That one is also about to get destroyed. We sending in the general as using them basically as cannon fodder here, just to stop this unit and allowing these guys to fire into the unit. So these two quite quickly are gonna break, and I'm gonna let the general chase them off and make sure that they do not come back. Over on this side, they've managed to send forward some of the cavalry to start dealing some damage to this militia unit. But they're holding on at this point. One of the enemy units have fallen over here, and we've got a militia unit backed up by a general fighting these three. So they're gonna hold out quite well since they're supported by a general fighting in the midst there. And at the same time we are pulling fire from the top walls here, moving the only real infantry unit off to the side here to fire into the rear. And this battle is soon going to be over, because all I need to do is make sure that all enemy infantry units are routing at the same time. Then they can't climb the wall, and it effectively means that they can't win. So this is kind of a short battle, and pretty soon we're going to win here, spoiler alert. And with that I'll have to, you know, then the plan comes to how do I defeat this, and from just they're gonna run around running amok through the Norwegian countryside, setting fire to everything. So we obviously don't want that, so we need a plan to send them out of our territory. I should mention here, the last battle, the what's it called? The ambush battle. I did actually go ahead because I didn't have enough movement range to actually move back from it to safety of the town. So what I did was I actually went ahead and I attacked the enemy town, and I was able to defeat them just using my howitzers. So I used my howitzers to kill the 3 garrisoned militia units that were holding the town, and there we go. I think I just won the battle right here. There we go. Just won the battle. So this one took less than 5 minutes. I only lost 500 men while the enemy lost 1200. And a large part of that was that they lost a lot of infantry. Now the key thing is here that in Empire you're able to resupply within enemy territory to a certain extent, and so we need to chase after these. Now I imagine that because we've seen so many Russian armies moving around with barely full strength, that they don't have the money to replenish their troops. But yeah, so I was able to, the area which we were originally tasked with taking with the army that got ambushed, we actually managed to take that from the enemy, and I'm holding that town currently. So here we got the results of the defense of Oslo. As we can see, the line infantry did the bulk of this. They managed to kill 500, so almost half of it, of what the enemy lost. Then the generals did a good part. Thing is, you can't always just look at the kills to see how effective in battle they were, since they were able to lock down the enemy. Well, one of the generals were able to lock down the enemy units, so that the line infantry could shoot at them, and the other general was able to inspire the militia unit that was stuck in melee fighting and kept them fighting, even though, I mean, if he wasn't there, fighting, slashing away at the Russians in among the fighting there, they'd most likely had given way, and the battle would have dragged on for much longer, and the enemy would possibly start to scale the wall. So there we have this. I'm gonna jump into the next battle, and the next battle is going to be, if you remember, we had an army in Moscow, and we were sending that to take the current capital of the Russian kingdom. So we're going through the forest north, and we run into two armies, and we're gonna fight that battle, or we're gonna look at that battle, which is a very long battle, but it ends... well, you know what? I'll not go into that right now. We'll go into that once we actually go to the battle. So let's go ahead and jump right over into that battle, shall we? Right, and so here we are for that great battle in the big forest. It's raining, and I'll try to get as many close-ups as possible, because this obviously doesn't look that great. One thing that I noticed, let's see if I can get that going again, is, yeah, look at that. So it's if, you know, if I'm in sort of a balloon or something flying over the battlefield, it's like someone standing right behind me pouring water down over my head. Look, there's like no rain, more or less, or very little of it down here in the corner. So that looks a bit strange. We've already been able to defeat two cavalry regiments that charge straight into me. I'm gonna go ahead and detail what's going on. So over on this side we'll have a cavalry fight against some dragoons stuck in the forest. And we'll have our two regiments of cavalry and the hussars dealing with that, and then I've got my infantry stretched out along here. Here is my key position. First, I mean, we've got this nice hill so that I could put my artillery on, and my plan was to defend around the hill. But then I realized, I mean, I have a perfectly nice forest in front of this, which I'll be able to protect my troops in, so I drew up, or I sent the troops forward to take this forest. And so we're holding the forest line all the way up here, and then all the way out here, protecting the hill. So not only do I have the advantage of looking down at the enemy, I'm looking down at the enemy from a forest, so their bullets are being soaked up while we are delivering a massive amount of damage on the enemy, and we'll see this as the battle goes on. It also, of course, soaks up a lot of cannonballs. We've got an interesting Russian unit that has turned up, which is the Leibgarde, or the Lifeguard unit, which has turned up here, the first foot guards. Now you'd imagine these guys would be able to pack quite the punch, but because I have such great precision firing against the enemy from the cover of the forest, and also we're gonna shell them with howitzer shots. And not only that, so they're outnumbered against two units stuck in the forest. They're in the open, so it's the perfect position to take on these guys. And look at the units over here. This one's lost 7, this one's lost 5, and the Leibgarde, what must be the strongest infantry unit in the Russian arsenal, is getting absolutely hammered and is not able to deliver any effective fire. So it's really perfect terrain for me to defend. as the enemy has to march up this hill, and as they come into range, we'll get the first shot off at close range, meaning massive casualties, and then as the enemy return fire, they'll have to return fire into the forest, which will, the bullets will obviously be soaked up by the forest, and it won't work out too well for them. And in this case, the AI is, well, the AI is the AI, so they send up their strongest unit unsupported straight into this murderous fire, and it didn't go too well. Now, most of the fighting beyond this is, because this position is so strong, I never actually really spent a lot of time focusing on this side, because it was more important for me to look at this side, because here we have tons of cavalry regiments riding around. So we got dragoons upon dragoons marching around, and there's going to be a lot of them because the Russians, they really like their stupid dragoons and cavalry, which they taunt me with constantly. Here's my hussars taking on some Turkish Tatars. We've got a general, and the fighting in the forest is continuing. At the point right here, the enemy is now, I believe, actually outnumbering my men, and it doesn't look as though I'm going to win. And with more and more cavalry coming on, it looked as though the enemy might be able to attack my troops down here in the open, which would have been very bad. And we can see this unit is kind of giving way already. But I will be able to, or my hussars will be able to send the Turkish Tatars away. They'll be able to attack from the back now, not before a kind of disastrous friendly fire in this region, where the smaller of the hussar units is gonna lose like half its men. I'm gonna accidentally shoot up 20 or so of my own hussars there, which is unfortunate, but that's sort of something you really have to be careful with when using hussars. They like to shoot their own people. So we're gonna defeat them, we're gonna ride up, and then we're gonna save this area. But a lot of this cavalry maneuvering is gonna be down to the hussars after this, because the normal line cavalry will be broken down. So over here out in the open, the fight is going mostly against enemy cavalry, but there are also some Russian militia units out here that we're pushing down fire upon. These guys out in the open is going to take a few more casualties than the other. This I didn't actually see, that the enemy marched this bloody close, sending 2 units this close, which obviously isn't going to work, given our strong defensive position here. I'm not entirely sure what kind of... At first when I saw the trajectory of those shots, I imagined, oh shit, they've got howitzers. But I'm pretty sure, I never actually looked close up on this, but yeah, they've got mortars firing round shots, so not really that effective. And we can see at this point that with that bayonet charge, a failed bayonet charge, over the strongest point that I have, and with more and more militia just falling apart on this side, the front attack is not going that well. It's going to be down to maneuvering now on this side, where we can see the hussars have been able to defeat the Tatars, and they're now stuck in, and we've turned the tide of this cavalry battle. But I need to turn it a little bit more by sending in the 3rd Regiment of Foot, firing into the side. Now, we can't really, it's not that easy to see, but because there's no button like in Medieval 2 where you click and you can see who's who. But the enemy is concentrated in the center. You can kind of tell that my troops are on here and there, so we kind of, I mean, they're kind of a good angle to shoot at. Now they will, which I actually missed during the actual battle, they will be attacked by these guys in the flank, but at that point I decide, you know what, it's better to keep pushing in these to rally on the cavalry, get the cavalry out of there, get them firing on the enemy, and then, you know, the maneuverability of having cavalry is better than, you know, I can expend one line infantry unit to make sure that this holds. So the battle can do this right now. We're getting flanked fire, but it's a militia unit, so it's not really getting those kills in on us. And the enemy, as per usual, I mean, my tactic is really take a strong position, let the enemy walk straight into it, and then in case the enemy starts to fall apart, I usually fold out the flanks to attack them. So the Leibgarde at this point is actually back. They didn't have enough first time to attack. And at this point, I think they even, well, they have the drummer, so I guess the drummer of the Leibgarde has rallied the men, but they're not gonna stand for long. As we can see, they're dropping quite a few men, and it's still those strong units stationed in the forest, so it's not really gonna happen. And moving further up is just gonna increase the casualty on the side of the Leibgarde. Probably actually helps the Russians a bit, me cutting away all this dead flesh that they can't really pay for anymore. So it continues. This, I never actually looked at this fight over here. Has this occurred maybe already? Yes. Unfortunately we missed this. So at this point I decided, you know what, it's time to pull forward a bit on this side. So I moved up, but I could see enemy cavalry coming this way, but I couldn't focus on the side. So what I did was that I did this like in the shape of a V, and so these guys could fire on the infantry, and so coming forwards into this death trap in this area. And this one was just purely to protect these guys from a possible cavalry charge, and that's exactly what they did. And I did not micromanage this at all. I just put them there, and it worked out perfectly. So I was very happy with that maneuver. And right now it's kind of safe. And at this point I thought, oh, this battle is going to drag on for quite a while because of the enemy reinforcements. So we're going to start and go ahead and speed this up a bit to fast forward really out of this just defensive line to when I start making offensive maneuvers, because the enemy is slowly trickling in and the battle's going to drag on for so long if I just stay on my position, and the enemy has not that many men, so it's just about, you know, it would be better to just pull forwards and sort of make a circle around where they're coming in. And I believe the enemy is actually coming in around this area. Yes, we've got a small Lancer unit coming in over there. Not entirely sure if we've seen these guys before. The first Lancers, Don Cossack Host, coming in, but there's only 38 of them, and I mean, we can see the disaster of trying to attack the hill, which I've taken a very strong position on. So let's go ahead and speed this up a bit to the point where we go ahead and leave our strong position and decide to attack the enemy and start to do some offensive maneuvers, and we can take a closer look at that, which is probably more interesting than seeing just these static defense lines, which I always do in really all the in Napoleon and Empire. But I really like this kind of Total War bit more than I like the sort of sword and shield stuff, because here you can pull back, you can remaneuver and so forth. In most of what I find with the sword and shield and stuff is that you maneuver around and then you'll have to commit to the action with more or less everything, and there's not like you can just pull back or anything. Then it's just a matter of, you know, making sure that your meat grind is the meat grind that wins. So I guess I haven't started pulling up just yet, but yeah, a little bit on this side. So I guess we'll take a look at this side where I'm moving forwards. However, as we can see, I kind of moved forward a bit too early, and we kind of caught out by some enemy cavalry. The Russian hussars have turned up, and they're able to strike some of my men in the back. But no unit will actually be forced to retreat due to this. Then, if the hussars didn't really do that much, is the enemy howitzers, which they've rolled up at this point, which are going to do quite a lot. As we saw from this shot that exploded right here, it took out massive amounts of troops. And we're going to have a problem trying to get up to that, especially now when I'm moving so many at the close distance, which means that we have the troops in these thick formations, which is not good if you're advancing on howitzers. So I probably should have spread this out to begin with. But the idea when I actually sent the men out, because as I recall, I mostly checked the left side because they were still fighting there. I sent these forwards mostly expecting to just go into the artillery. I thought the battle was more or less over at this point, and that it was just the fact that I hadn't won yet was that I hadn't sent the enemy cannons away. Ooh, nasty hits here on the Grenadiers, the 9th Grenadiers. We got massive hole due to those howitzer shots. We got some more bloody cavalry. The Russians do like their cavalry. Coming and messing up my business, but we have started to do offensive maneuvers forwards here. We've got a lot of these smaller Russian militia units. Basically, the entire Russian army is made up at this point mostly of these kind of armies where they only have these smaller units from previous wars that I've broken down, and I'm not entirely sure. I guess it's the bankruptcy that sort of might have, for some reason, stopped them from replenishing these guys. I mean, they've moved out of the bankruptcy situation, I'm pretty sure. So I'm not entirely sure why they haven't started trying to... I mean, what they should have done is merged all these small units. Because they're not really effective in any way, having all these smaller units. They should have merged them, started getting some new units, and unlike... I mean, the Russians really got blasted by me compared to a lot of the other nations, because I mean the Polish have started. They more or less completely abandoned the militia units, which the Russians still rely very heavily on. All these militia units compared to the Polish, which at this point mostly have line infantry units. Bad micromanagement on my part here. We can see that most of the units are firing into the hillside here, but not only that, they're firing onto the fence. Now luckily this militia unit, I guess because of the angle here, they didn't really see the men, and so they moved up and took a heavy shot here in the side, and they are fleeing. So at this point I've been able to spread out my units a lot better, as we can see, and we're slowly making our way forwards towards the artillery position, which is over here, and the enemy actually starts to move the artillery, sort of like someone sped up an old black and white movie. Charlie Chaplin is part of rolling these cannons, and maybe that's the effect of Red Bull. So a bit of aid there for the Russians. At this point, on the left side, we can see that the enemy has been broken down and are falling apart. The only thing is left is this small unit hiding next to this little house, trying to defend that, but they're not really able to withstand the fire that's coming down from our men, and we're pushing forwards now towards the cannons. It's also, you know, basically as we're pulling forwards here, there's a lot small pockets of resistance of these militia units that are a bit here and there on the battlefield, and they're not really able to coordinate their defense or attacks. They keep moving forwards till they reach me and start to fight, and I'll maneuver them and so forth, when they probably should have pulled back and taken a defensive position somewhere, rather than slowly walking up here and getting destroyed in all manners of ways. And sending the cavalry just straight onto my lines. As we can see, this dragoon unit went right into this line infantry. We keep firing. This one's got a pretty good position, is at least hiding in the forest, but there's just an overwhelming amount of Swedish troops. So we've more or less been able to we've split our army into 2 army groups at this point. I have sent one here to actually stop up the troops that are coming onto the field, and then we have this one encircling the units that are next to the cannons, and at this point the cannons have more or less given up. They haven't fired a shot for a very long time, and it's just these 2 units of militia trying to hold on next to this one cannon. Maybe they'll actually be able to get off a shot here. I think I remember seeing them manage to possibly get one shot off, but no. They lost too many men, and it's time to go home, leaving the cannons behind. And with that, the militia units fall as well, and with that, that pocket has been destroyed, and now it's really pushing forwards up towards this hill and shooting these guys to pieces. Now this is going to be kind of a drawn out fight. Looking at the timer, it's going to drag out quite some time, and it's just going to be me maneuvering closer and closer to making a circle around the enemy which is coming forward here. I mean, at some point I probably might have wanted to move the cannons forward, but my cannons were pushed so far back, and they would have gone through all this forest, which would have slowed them down so much that when they would actually be able to deploy and fire upon the enemy, the battle would have more or less been over. So at this point, a little bit of poor micromanagement again, similar to what happened when the enemy attacked me, is happening to when they were attacking me, is happening to me at this point. So the enemy is hiding. I mean, at this right here, they can't really shoot the troops up on the hill, and to be able to do that, I'll have to pull so far forward as to get up over here, and we know what happens at close range. Well, the shot will go through multiple people. So even if it's just a small militia unit of 100 men, they'll still be able to deliver quite effective damage to my troops. So it's about sending troops in from other sides, sort of coming in from the flank and trying to hit the enemy that way. But it's mostly going to be down to, I mean, we can see the half circle already starting to close here. We have gone almost all the way out to the edge here, and we're slowly going to advance here. But it's I mean, as I previously said here, it's a really bad position because my men have to go real close to be able to fire upon the enemy. And it's like that all around this hill, and if I go too far forwards, there's a risk of you know, getting stuck into melee fight with the enemy, which is just going to favor them with making it a slower meat grind and prolonging the battle, whereas me firing at the enemy is going to yield me a lot better result. But I was hoping that possibly I could get a third battle, the defense of Karelia as well, in here, in this video. So I don't want to show too much of this because it's just slaughter really at this point, and slow maneuvering to get into a good position. So I think we'll speed it up a little bit, and then yeah, what I can do is well, obviously we want to see the statistics. We want to see the statistics. We want to see the statistics, as someone pointed out in an earlier video, that they really would like to see the sort of the cause of the battle, like how many died, which is a pretty big part about Total War. You want to see those rates of casualties. So yeah, I think I'll go ahead and basically end this battle right here, and we'll jump forwards to the point where I can show you the statistics, and then maybe throw in a third battle, or just show the situation as it is on the grand scale of things. And here we have the results of that great battle in the forest. Now, as you can see, it only actually mentions the army that attacked me. It didn't actually show the reinforcements army that came up. So I probably should have screenshotted the actual results on the screen. But what we can see is, I mean, the enemy deployed 3,500 men, but somehow I was able to kill 7,279 soldiers. So we know that the enemy had more than 3,000 men. In fact, they had around 10,000 soldiers against my 4,000. So the fact that I lost half my army against 10,000 Russians isn't that bad, but it obviously cuts down the chance of me continuing that campaign, and also with the fact that we had the Polish being able to ambush us, makes me more cautious to move into territory which is so heavily with so many forests, that I'm thinking possibly that I'll take the army around back to Moscow and then go north, and then by ship sail them as close as I can to the town, possibly even taking the port and sending him that way, so bypassing the possibility of being ambushed in those thick forests. Because, I mean, the fact that my greatest army was almost completely wiped out by the Polish in that battle, that would have been a great setback for me. So we don't want anything like that happening. And highest killer is 1 line infantry, generic one, killing almost 1,000 enemies. And we have 2 at almost the same number with 800, and going through here, the Hussars did really well out of the cavalry. So Regiment of Horse is not really doing that well. One of the Hussars unit did really badly, but that because they were mostly team killed. And then round shot cannons really poorly, howitzers quite good. So well, there we have it. Let's see if I can squeeze in another battle, or if we go to the strategic map to show you the current situation on the battlefields. And there we are, looking at the overall strategic situation of what's going on. As I said, I was able to take Minsk with my howitzers, losing only a single soldier. However, before that, this army was, of course, ambushed at a town to the north of Minsk, where we almost got utterly wiped out. As we can see, the army is very low on manpower. Luckily for me, only 2 cannons were killed, and those were the normal straight-barreled cannons. That they're not really effective. I mean, their canister is shit, and round shot isn't that good at certain angles either. But we were able to take this nonetheless. They're a bit unhappy with me, but hopefully we'll change that. Anyways, I'll be able to hold that in the possibility of a revolution going in there. So let's take a look. Well, the battle in Norway, we can take a look at that, because that was the first battle. So their army is still here. The line infantry is still attacked. They've got lots of troops still. This army is not really able to pursue that, but however this one is. So I'm gonna send these guys over to pursue them and destroy the enemy. What I'm going to do is we'll add on one of the generals, the main one, which is actually quite good. Svanström. He will take charge of this army and he'll go out and rout these guys thoroughly. And also my plan of launching my army here with a navy, so I need to move the navy over there. We have this navy over here, which I'll go ahead and capture these ports, just burn them to stop the Prussians from receiving money from them, and then the trade route might as well attack them even though there's no actual trade going on there. As we can see, the Prussians are actually building up some troops here, so it's better that I attack now than later. However, as we can see, the Polish have actually sent out an army in response to my march on Warsaw, so we'll have to continue straight on to Warsaw if we want to. I could possibly even bypass this army, but it's probably better to defeat this army and then go on to Warsaw. The armies that survived of the ambush got strewn out, and it seems like they're on their way back to Warsaw. We've got pretty good general out here. Could possibly ambush him or attack him out. Take troops out of the town to destroy him, just to take away Rajman Loborski from the Polish. And with this conducted, let's go. Yes, the army sent up here in the north. We lost one unit, which was a cavalry unit. The army wasn't as beaten as the other army, but they're down to half strength. It'll cost me 8,000 to replenish, and continuing in this, I mean, look at this. This is pure ambush ground all the way up to this. So, not really that great, but we cut down a big part of the Russian army. So, that's good. But we're going to pull back, and we're going to go north to possibly move through here, or with the navy attack there. And then I've got these smaller units that need to make their way into Petroyskaya in Karelian. Move the troops closer there. I should have actually stopped this one, because the enemy could attack there and not go, or they basically go around the fortress there. Could send extra troops, but I'm recruiting troops just to hold down a lot of these areas. I'm not entirely sure if this is a part of the mod, but government type, which is absolute monarchy, seems to increase more and more the negative effects of that. So I'm not entirely sure what's that due to, but it seems that they are really unhappy. Could be the fact that I'm doing all these wars, which is definitely costing a peasants a lot of lives. But what is glory then, compared to a few peasants? Can build some churches here to make sure that I can switch the religion in this area rather quick. At this point, Moscow is... we haven't reached the 50% mark, but Protestantism is the third largest, and it's increasing by 1.8% each turn. And at this point I'm able to hold it without problem, or without setting a big army there. There isn't as many people in this region, so it should be easier to convert this. We do, however, have a large amount of priests in this region. So we'll burn this down. I actually tried to burn it down last time, but the enemy moved in to burn it themselves, making sure that it wasn't actually burned. But I can build church schools, 2 of them, and then with the priests can move over into these regions. Actually, I might do that just because this one is safe, and start to turn this, but I'm not entirely sure if it's worth it going into this region, because we've got so many priests in this region. It might be better to go to this one, because there we have at least a fighting chance. and instead wait until we get peace with Poland, or really when we defeat the Polish entirely, because I do believe that the priests actually stay in position even after the war, so we're possibly looking at have to destroying the the Polish nation entirely if I want to get rid of all these stupid priests. With that said, we've got the current layout of what's going on, and as I always say, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video, and hopefully I'll see you guys for the next one. Bye!